Welcome to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages, with your host, Matthew Shipp. This is the podcast for all of those who are involved in the agriculture all the way to the distribution of beverages. And now your host, Matthew Shipp.
Hello and welcome to Harvest to Pour. I'm your host, Matthew Shipp, and today I am here with Debbie Wildrick, founder of Debbie Wildrick Consulting, widely touted as the Queen of Beverages. Debbie has been in the food and beverage industry for over 30 years with the knowledge and expertise to be able to leverage the successful building and growing of your brand. Debbie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So take us, the Queen of Beverages. I found that interesting. So tell us how you became the Queen of Beverages and how your consulting business came to be.
Well, I think the Queen of Beverages really happened when I was with 7-Eleven. And eventually I ran all of 7-Eleven's beverage business, which included everything from alcohol to non-alcohol, milk, juice, and 7-Eleven coffee, Slurpee, and Big Gulp. So I had both the vault and the proprietary. It was a $4 billion business. But I think what's really important and what I like to say about being the Queen of Beverages is that when you're making decisions of which products go on the shelf, it is imperative that you understand that those decisions will lead to the consumer pulling it off the shelf and consuming over and over again, because you're putting products in front of your store base that will help increase their sales and profits. And so you're learning all kinds of things about making decisions. And after I left 7-Eleven, I really would attend things like BevNet, which is a really big, BevNet puts on a live event every year. And I was so many times introduced by the best beverage buyer ever at 7-Eleven. So as I evolved, I went to work for I worked directly for several early stage or startup beverages before starting the first consulting business that I did. So that's how I got that name, is really being one of the best. And, everybody in the industry knew me. And I think it's so important to the career and having that retailer side. I also happen to be one of the only consultants and industry people that has both sides of the industry, which is selling and, certainly managing from a retailer perspective.
All right. And in your coaching business now, how do you help beverage industry owners? Where do you come at them? Where do they mostly come to you?
Well, many times they will come to me when they're just starting out. And since I have been in all verticals of the industry by this time, they will come to me with their idea, and I actually help them, first of all, understand whether or not that's a good idea based on trends, and help them with the market opportunity and the product development.
Mm-hmm.
I will help them understand whether or not they've got a viable business, and then begin to build strategy for them. So I have also worked in every major market in the country. I've worked in every channel of a retail distribution and understand that modeling as well. And then consumer messaging and branding. So I'm bringing all this together.
Yeah, I saw your website. Yeah. Your website seems to cover just about every vertical there is to taking a business from beginning to profit. Do you, and I said you've been involved in every one of those, so I'm assuming, I mean, any one person, do you handle all of this on your own? Do you have a team that helps you with the financing all the way to the branding, or is it just you?
It is just me, and
Okay.
I'm working towards building a program that
Uh-huh.
actually teaches the entrepreneur. I'm also looking to work more today with mid mid stage brands, let's say $1 to $5 million, because I have the skill sets to be able to come in and really do the due diligence on your business and help you determine where you can take it to the next level, and how what's working and what's not working, versus starting from the beginning, which is what I did in many years before, over the
Yes.
years.
So these mid-stage businesses kind of had a few years to like know they can be successful, but they've bubbled up some new problems they didn't know they had, and that's kind of where. And then they notice they tend to want to like, okay, we're at a point we need to step up or scale up a bit, or we won't be here any longer. Do you find that's kind of when they realize they have a pain point that you can help them with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so when you've already built your business,
Hmm.
you've gone into retail, you know what your velocities are, you know what your cost of goods are, because you've got history. And so you can start to dig in and understand where your pain points are, because you've got to meet all those in order to get to profitability. You've got to understand all of your costs. You've got to understand all your margins. You've got to understand your velocities at retail and whether or not they're continuing to increase, because if you're just building if you're just building additional stores without increasing your velocities, that's one of the problems, as an example. And
Speak
maybe
of
that's oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. I was going to ask you to speak about velocities, make sure everybody kind of has that terminology understood.
Absolutely. So that is the amount of times that your product basically leaves the shelf. So
Hmm.
it's turns. And a lot of times, even at mid stage, one of the biggest mistakes that this early stage companies can miss, and certainly the entrepreneur, is not understanding what your velocities are, or your turns at retail. Because you can put the pro I like to say, you can put the product in the back door and get it on the shelf, but if you don't understand what's going out the front door, and whether or not it is increasing over time, and if you the only way to understand that is to actually get your scan data from the retailer, so what's going through the register. And many entrepreneurs don't even really think about that, and so they don't understand whether or not their product is really growing and moving through to the consumer.
Okay. So what do you said you were talking about that's what early stage companies need to know. What are you finding with the mid stage companies where they are as far as they're probably already in a few grocery or depending on what retailers they're in, and they're noticing, they've had some success, but what are some of the challenges you're finding the mid stage companies have that are different from the early stage?
Well, the the one that I was just talking about,
Hmm.
mid-stage companies can really have more challenges around that
Okay.
than early stage, because they think that they're building sales, but they haven't really looked at it
Okay.
in the way that I would look at it, and help them analyze their business. So that's first of all. But the other thing is that mid-stage companies probably need to review their consumer messaging. They may even need to do some branding tweaks, because it's not unusual for a company in the first 5 to 10 years to make branding changes 7 to 10 times. You know,
Oh, wow.
it's
Mhm.
because we don't, you know, it's all a learning and evaluation. And so
Absolutely.
the other thing that mid-stage companies are challenged with it, and I was even talking about this with early stage companies as well, but I'm shipping, I don't know, let's call it I'm $1 million in revenue. And so I'm shipping products all over. I've got my cost of goods. I'm managing that. I've got a co-packer, and I'm understanding, you know, what I'm spending because I've got my P&Ls working. But what I find with mid-stage companies is that they've got, I just dealt with this when I was working directly for Fry Farms, the beverage division of a produce company. And what you find when you dig into your logistics, that your transportation costs are so high, as an example, that your cost of goods and your margins have really gotten in the way of you becoming profitable.
Mhm.
And so, and that was the case with Fry Farms, because we really we were still shipping in pallet quantities, or, you know, less than 10 pallets, never, very seldom a full truckload. And also it had to be a refrigerated truck. And so that's the hardest thing for mid-stage companies, I think, to understand how to be effective with their transportation costs.
Okay. Do you think in some situation like that, when you find this financial hole where their profits are getting eaten, for in this case by transportation, are they aware of that particular problem or not? Or, and if they are aware of it, is it that they bind up, they don't know what to do about it, or they're delivering it off to a team member to take care of it and it's being misinterpreted?
I think all of the above. Yeah, it depends. And I remember when I was building Aquaball, which is a brand going back a few years, and we estimated the cost of goods based on shipping truckloads.
Mhm.
And we had a team member who was in charge of actually putting together the cost of shipping every time we shipped, and analyzing that so that we could actually boil it down to a per bottle cost.
Mhm.
And as long so it requires a lot of work to really understand what you're really spending for transportation.
Mhm.
And it's also even transportation between the contract manufacturer and your warehouse as well. And so the only way to really review that, and I think it takes certainly a team, if not one person, but, you know, really evaluating every time you're shipping, every time you have any kind of shipping expense, that you're evaluating how well you did with it. And certainly you can negotiate. The more volume you ship, the more you can negotiate better transportation cost.
Okay. And now a word from our sponsors. If you're a business owner trying to grow but feel stuck, it might be time to call the right kind of help. Dr. Mike Smith from Action Coach isn't just another consultant. He's a certified business and executive coach with the tools to help you grow smarter, not harder. Whether you need better systems, clearer strategy, or just want to get your time back, Action Coach can help you build a business that works without burning you out. You can learn more and even book a free session at actioncoach.com/St. Louis West. Don't guess your way through growth. Let Dr. Mike Smith with Action Coach show you the smarter path. Hey, are you spinning your wheels trying to figure out what will really boost your business's bottom line? At Emberry Solutions, our Profit Priority Workshop is here to cut through the noise. We help you zero in on what truly matters, aligning your team, optimizing your processes, and magnifying your profits. Imagine your business running smoother than ever, with every decision and effort leading straight to increased profits. That's what focusing on the right priorities can do. Ready to boost your efficiency and profits? Visit Emberry Solutions and let's start making your business work smarter. At Emberry Solutions, we take your business from bottlenecks to breakthroughs. So we've talked a little bit about finance, we've talked about transportation, we've talked a little bit about branding, many of the verticals in which you help with. What is, when it comes to many of these problems that beverage businesses are having, what challenge do you often see the most?
The biggest challenge, I think the most challenge I see, really at the end of the day, everybody knows that they have to get the product to the shelf. And that requires the ability to go to the retailer headquarters to get your brand on the shelf, to get authorization, to get yourselves into the store schematics and to be on the shelf and then be moving the product off the shelf. And so I have found over the years, in the biggest effort that I can help with regard to companies is their sales and distribution strategy, and how they really begin to build that part of the business. And that's what everybody understands, that they have to do that in order to be successful, but they find it very difficult. And then the other part of that, especially if you are a mid-stage company, you may have, instead of having a very clear strategy where you had a launch market and then you had a region expansion, and then you put yourself in a position to sweep across the country, you may have had a phone call from H-E-B in Texas and Southern California and Minneapolis. Target wants you, or and you've over the time that you've been in business, you've actually scattered yourself in so many different places without having the critical mass to be able to not only effectively ship your product and get it to the end user, but also critical mass enables you to really more effectively market your product.
Okay. And when you're speaking of critical mass, you're talking about being able to produce enough product to serve more and more for your distribution.
I'm actually talking about,
Okay.
that's one way of referring to critical mass, but what I'm talking about is critical mass within a market. So,
okay.
So let's say, I used H-E-B as an example. Let's say that H-E-B is a Texas retailer, and Publix would be another good example of this, because they're in the Southeast and they've got so many stores. And so you want to think about your markets as anchors. And so H-E-B becomes an anchor in Texas. And so now what you want to do is you want to focus on Texas, and making sure that you're getting in distribution to all the other retailers around H-E-B in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And that, in today's world, that's a very difficult process, because Texas is based with H-E-B, but they're also based with Kroger, and they're also based with Albertsons, and both of those are typically retailers that do not do regional expansions.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's all about strategy. And if a company's, 1 to 5 million, like I referenced before, the thing that I specialize in is coming in and doing that due diligence and that's one of the first things that I really look at is where has your current distribution gone, and have you been able to create critical masses in certain markets? Maybe you've already got Kroger nationally, and maybe you've already got Albertsons nationally. And then the other way of looking at that too is if you did get those two as an example, and you were able to then take those markets tactically and focus on building the retailer community around those two. But typically it's very difficult to get to the point that you've got national distribution ahead of regional distribution.
Okay. So I think I know the answer to this, but if there was one thing a beverage company approaching that $1 million stage could do right now, what would that be to improve their distribution?
I would look at who is their sale. So they've got in order to improve your distribution, you have to have team in one way or the other. Okay. And so whether or not it's a team of making sure that you've got the right brokers in place, the right distributors in place that you can help grow your business, like KeHE as an example, really professes to be a distributor that will help you with their retailer community, and then your internal team. And I had this issue. I referenced the beverage earlier. We went out and we hired brokers in every region of the country, and we began to set targets and so forth. But so you've got a number of team members that you've just added. But remember, brokers represent lots and lots of brands. And so there was only 2 of us that were actually managing the brokers. And that's not enough people internally to manage your getting into retailers. So it's if you're at $1 million, it's now time to really evaluate how your team works and where you can take it from here.
So you mentioned kind of 2 different teams. You kind of have this team of brokers and distributors they're outside of your main business, but then you have this internal team that helps manage them. Who are the key players on that internal team?
Well, it starts if depending on your level, it's usually you've got a VP of sales and then you've got regional directors. And those directors will, in the case of managing brokers, but you want to have a sales team, and maybe it's a head if you're at $1 million and you don't want to necessarily move to the VP of sales yet. Which I have many times. I like to also recommend the timing around when you hire which team members.
Okay.
Because obviously the salary and what you're paying them and salary and benefits and so forth, and whether or not you're at a stage that you should really have that level of team member. If you're 5 million, you're definitely going to have VP of sales. But yeah, so it's making sure that you've got a director, regional directors, and account managers that are managing the brokers. So
Okay.
you would want to place those team members based on where you have current distribution and where you're trying to grow, so that you can strategically manage the business.
Now, do these team members ever help with strategy overall? Because they're out there seeing what different brokers and different distributors are doing, and they bring that back to the heart of the company. Is there another key role they play within the company as far as communicating that so you can build a better, more efficient and effective strategy towards your distribution and profit?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, internally, and I know there's a lot more to building a product, right? We got manufacturing. Your most important team is your sales team, because in this business, we are we 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 won't be there if we're not if we don't have sales, right?
Hmm.
And so definitely your sales team is your eyes and ears, and they're bringing back ways to change, ways to evaluate
Hmm.
differently, obviously getting involved in strategy. I mean, usually what you're doing is you're having an annual planning meeting. You'll have a quarterly meeting, and that's between, that's really all the sales team.
Okay. That was great. I really feel that communication piece and how you communicate and how you interpret what you're communicating to each other on the team is very important. And sometimes people can come into a meeting and also be saying the same thing, but thinking something completely different. So, yeah, so that exactly, I really appreciate that piece of knowledge there, that for any beverage business out there thinking about like, hey, do I have all these? Are they communicating? Do I know where my finances are? Am I losing money in my shipping? Oh, wait. Maybe it's time I look for some outside help. All right. So with that, I got a couple more questions. This one's kind of a fun one. I always ask everybody else. So, what is your favorite beverage? Being this a podcast about beverages.
Great. My favorite beverage is a Tito's martini with a lemon twist.
Oh wow! All right, that's great. Tito's is, man. I've been hearing a lot about them, so I'm gonna have to check them out too. And then also, finally, you have I believe you have a book coming out, and it's talking about, was it 10 pillars of a successful company?
Yes, it's both a book, The 10 Pillars of a Successful Company,
Mm-hmm.
which will be based a lot around storytelling,
Mm-hmm.
a little lighter, hopefully humorous. And then I'm also working on a program that
Mm-hmm.
is the 10 pillars of a successful company. And it's an educational program. So if I'm an entrepreneur, that I can actually join my program and will learn the business through a video workshop, if you
Okay.
will. And so that's in process, and that will I'm working on launching the beta um around July 15th. So each pillar will start, and then if you participate in my beta, you'll be going through every 3 weeks. You'll get a new lesson.
Okay, that sounds great. So, I'm curious, those pillars you're talking about. I'm guessing we touched on some of those pillars during our talk.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
So,
So, go ahead.
yeah. So they go through, and I like to say in no particular order, but I will say that the first one is, and I actually, if you go to my website, debbiewildrick.com, the first one is market opportunity and product, um not differentiation, market opportunity. Why have I just lost the name? It's pillar number 1, and it's really about understanding whether or not we have a market opportunity with regard to our product. And free.debbiewildrick.com will take you to an overview that you can download and get a little bit more into that. The pillar number 2 is differentiation. And so those two are key. I've got an idea, but whether or not I truly understand if it will be successful with the consumer is yet to be determined, really. So we want to make sure that those two. Pillar number 4, by the way, is differentiation. I mean, viable business model. And and that really starts once you've got the idea, and that you really believe that it can be successful. now I've got to just on the back of a napkin, I've got to do this simple little viable business model to see whether or not I can get it formulated and I can make the appropriate margins throughout the entire supply chain. So that's a little look into the pillars. And obviously, one is sales and distribution and marketing pillars. So
Well, this sounds really valuable. Yeah, this sounds really valuable for any company coming up, or even if they're, again, at mid-stage. Maybe certain pillars are going to mean more to them than others, and can they enter into your course at different stages, or is it a beginning to end style of course?
Well, I'm planning on pricing it as a package.
Got it.
But there's some, you just brought it an idea that they could, if they wanted to enter it at just with one particular subject matter, and it's very possible that could be an opportunity to look at pricing separately as well.
Okay, great. Well, glad I could help.
Yeah.
So on top of this, so we have your book, we have on your 10 pillars, we have your course coming up in beta in July 15th. And you can take a quick look at that on free.debbiewildrick.com and see if you want to be a part of that beta. I always like getting into that. You kind of get that raw piece of people starting new, and get in early, get ahead of it, and then also, of course, your consulting expertise as well. So, beverage business companies out there listening, tons of resources here with Debbie Wildrick. And before I finish out here, is there any other events or promotions you have? You've covered quite a few.
No.
Okay.
I think that's it.
All right. Well, this has been a exceptionally detailed, filled way to help your business grow, and some of the pitfalls that come up, especially you were talking about distribution. It seems to be a big bottleneck for a lot of people, both in financing and just the process of getting that piece done. And that can be, the lifeblood, especially if you're just not selling out of your own brick and mortar, but you're looking to sell out of other brick and mortars or other companies. This is a very important stage of your business. So Debbie, I hope people come to check you out. Everything I talked about will be in the show notes. Again, really appreciate you being on the show, and thanks again.
All right. Thanks. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Harvest to Pour, the business of beverages with Matthew Shipp. Check the show notes for our guest contact information and connect with Matthew Shipp on LinkedIn today.